Welcome to Frontier Behavioral Health's Real Recovery, Real Change. And now, here's your host, Ashley Carroll.
Hello, I'm Ashley Carroll. Welcome to Real Recovery, Real Change. Tonight you will meet Michael Bailey. Michael is a hard-working farm boy who dreamed of being a veterinarian and a basketball star. All of his dedication would disappear with addiction. This is Michael's story.
I was a farm boy. I had a lot of chores I had to do. Cows to put in the barn, feed, haul manure out, catch it for the fertilizers. Me and my grandpa, every April, we'd haul out the cow manure. Didn't have the manure spreader. We had to load it on a wagon, take it out in the field and unload it. And he helped me all the time. And as before school and after school. It was an everyday thing. Milk the cow every morning before I'd go to school. We had a fireplace upstairs and a Stokermatic stove downstairs in the basement. Wintertime it was pretty rough getting a block coal in, wood for upstairs. Then I'd have to go downstairs and take the ashes out and get the stoker coal in and make a way down to the barn to still feed the cows and make sure they had hay for them to eat. What free time I had, I played a little ball because I loved playing ball. I wanted to be an NBA star and a veterinarian, but it was hard to find time. We had a few neighbors. I played with them just a little bit, and they was all the time hollering. I know that I had to get going. We had all good memories, even though we was hauling out manure or picking corn by hand or helping him work in the garden. I mean, it was all good memories. Me and my grandpa got real close. My dad worked away all the time, so he was just home on the weekends. When I did find time to play ball, my dad did put me up 2 security lights down at the barn, and I had my ball goal was hung on the side of the barn, and I had a little bit of light there. I was a pretty good player. Sure was. We had a real long driveway, had them number 2 rocks on it, and every morning as I'd walk down, I'd dribble 2 balls so I could learn how to control it. And I was a pretty good control freak on a ball, but I didn't get to follow out what I wanted to do. I went from a kind of a boy to a man at an early age. I was playing fields at 9 years old by myself. Nobody around except my grandpa. But he never did use a tractor. He always done it with mules. I was about 13. I started smoking pot, and it kind of made me work. I felt like I could work more, and I had more energy. And so I kind of fell in love with smoking my pot, and I'd work harder, and I think I was getting more done. It really started changing when I turned 18. I got with this girl. Her grandma was a drug dealer, and where I was 18, they couldn't tell me that I had to stay home, but I'd call and tell them that I wouldn't be home so they wouldn't worry. She got me to doing pain pills, and I said, Lord, this is a lot better than the weed, but I said, I still like my weed, but it's a lot better. The pain pills give me twice more energy, and I was working even harder. But my mom, she kind of started noticing. And she sat me down one day and she said, what's wrong with you? Your eyes, they ain't right. I said, oh, it's just from the sweat where I've been working. She said, no, I had you. I know there's something wrong with you. I can tell by looking at you. I just kept telling her no, just a sweat, that I was all right. But she know better.
I'm a mom just like you, and I have a son that's fallen into the grip of opioids. Do I see my son as a bad person, a criminal, a drug addict? No, I still see him as my son with a tough behavioral problem that can be treated. That's why I wanted you to know about Frontier Behavioral Health. They see your family the same way. They treat the behavior and send the person you always knew back to you. Call them at 606-297-1501. Real recovery, real change. Frontier Behavioral Health.
Real Recovery, Real Change continues with Ashley Carroll.
Michael is losing the support of his family and his farm life. Now his life is turning to support his habit.
I'd say I was about 20 when I started. If I didn't have 15 to 20 a day, I was out looking. If I couldn't find it, I wasn't worried about what I had to do. All I was worried about was finding me 15 to 20 pain pills. It started getting pretty costly. But then it was $5 a piece, so a couple $100 a day. And I'd save my money, and then my dad, he'd give me money for working, and then I had a few cows in the process, and when I'd sell the calves, I'd keep all the money, and I'd ended up blowing it on pain pills. And then my dad, he kind of got to notice him on the weekends. He said, "Are you on drugs?" I said, "Well, does it look like I'm on drugs?" He said, "Well, sometimes, yeah, I think you are, because there's something wrong with you." And he said, "I think it's more than the pot." And he said, "I've known about it for a while, but," he said, "there's something else. You're doing something else behind it." I was probably about 26, but then I advanced it to the cocaine, and then they really started noticing it. He gave me a truck to drive. He took it from me. He said, you can't stay here and come in looking like that." And he said, "I don't want that around the girls." He said, "You know better than that." He said, "I ought to beat the hide off of you." And a few times he worked me over pretty good for it, which I probably deserved it. Probably deserved a little more than what I got, but I had a good friend that would come and help me all the time. And he was older. He was the same age as my brother. And but he'd do anything I'd ask for. And he said one day, I said, "Let's go get some pain pills." He said, he said, "The pain pills ain't good enough." I said, "Well, let's snort some coke." He said, "Snorting ain't no good." He said, "I'm gonna show you how to do it. If you're gonna do it the right way." He said, "Got any insulin needles?" I said, "No." I said, "I got a 3cc dog needle." He said, "That works." I said, "God," I said, "we can't use that, man." He said, "Trust me." He said, "I'll show you." And he fixed it up. I was scared to death of a needle at that time. He fixed it up and he gave me a shot. And man, if it didn't ring my head, I said, that's it. That's the way to go. But I said, I'll never be able to do myself. He said, "Yeah, you will." He said, "It might take a couple weeks," but he said, "When nobody's around," he said, "I promise you, you'll hit your own self." And he told the truth. I had in my pocket. I found me a pack of needles. I was shaking like a dog. I done it myself, and it just went from there. I started losing control. And then the Oxycontins come out, and I started doing them. I was doing both at the same time, speedballing. And I was really getting out of control. I was wrecking vehicles. When I woke my eyes up the next morning, that's the first thing I was doing, trying to get that fixed so I could get back to work. So he finally throwed me off the farm, told me not to come back. I slept under the bridge probably for 3 months, drunk out of muddy water holes, the river. I tried quitting, but it got to the point that if I had to steal it, whatever I had to do, I got the fix for today. I guess the lowest day is when I talked to my mom and told her, I said, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I said, I ain't had a shower in a week. And I said, you know me, I always took 2 a day. I said, I don't know what I'm gonna do. She said, well, you're gonna have to get on your knees and pray. I said, well, that's still, I said, praying ain't gonna give me a home. But I said, I guess it's a start. And I done it. But I still, it was just, the addiction was so bad that I just couldn't do the next right thing. And I got with this girl. Her parents let me move in with them. So that got me off the streets. I'd had a couple good jobs. When they'd come out to do a drug test, I'd fail them. I went to work for my dad. They come out with a drug test. I failed it, making good money. Starting out at $20 an hour. I worked probably 3 months, failed it. And finally, he gave me an old truck that I used to drive around on the farm. And I talked my girlfriend's mom and dad to putting tags and insurance on it. And I got it out and started to junking and just going around stealing. And I said to myself, Mikey, you don't steal, you've never stole. You was raised better than that. My mom was Christian for 45 years. Her dad was a preacher. I was raised better, and I know better, but I just couldn't stop the addiction. And my baby boy come to me and he said, Dad, he said, you're gonna have to straighten up. I said, my mom's in bad shape, and I hadn't been around them in probably a month. He said, my mom's in bad shape. He said, doctor said she probably won't live very long. And it was just like it went in one ear and out the other. And my mom was my pride. She was my rock. I could go to her and get anything I wanted until she found out I was on the needle real bad, and then she kind of cut me off. After she passed away, it still didn't dawn on me. And I called my boy and I told him, I said, I need help, but I don't know what to do. He said, I'll take care of you, Dad. And he Casey lawed me. And they sent me to Frontier. When I walked in, I weighed 112 pounds. My sugar was 604. I'd been there about a month. I really got my sugar stuff straightened up, and I started eating, because I'm a pretty good eater. When I sat down to eat, I'd missed a couple classes when I was in the hospital. I stayed up. I went 2 different times and stayed 3 days apiece. Finally, I got my sugar regulated, and when I was making that class up, that girl started talking about her mom passing away, and then it registered that Mom was gone, and I didn't have nobody. And I said, well, I either get right and do this and get right with the Lord, so maybe one of these days I can see her again.
With the loss of his mother and the encouragement of his son, Michael has come to a crossroads.
And I stayed 90 days, I graduated, and I've been doing the right next best thing since May the 4th. I got out. Mike today's back on the farm or working for Frontier. I go work 3 or 4 hours on the farm, go in at Frontier at 1 o'clock, coming to church every Thursday and Sunday. Probably doing the best like I was when I was a young man, young teenager. Relationship with my children, back relationship with my dad. I like to get my GED. I like to maybe go to college, maybe become a veterinarian. I don't know, but maybe. I'd love to get to do it. I still love fooling with cows. I still fool with them beetle dogs. It's not too late. There's help out there, and there's a better life than doing drugs, because that's no life there. All it is misery, pain, and heartache, and being broke. And I'm happy.
Michael is happy and is back on the farm with dreams of becoming a veterinarian again. Now let's meet Virgil Hicks, a young man that had to deal with abuse at an early age and would turn to addiction for help.
I'm originally from Pike County, Kentucky. That's where I mostly grew up. It was basically a typical family. I mean, we really didn't have, we went to church and all that stuff, and we had the typical Christian family that, that's the way people viewed it. We were sort of we weren't really poor, but we were in the aspect of what other people viewed. And we didn't have a whole lot to do, so we were in the mountains a whole lot. We ran around a lot together with friends, things like that. My stepfather was a coal truck driver, and my mom was a bus driver. Things started changing when I was 7. That's when basically the abuse started, and it was devastating to me. I felt like that I was sort of confused and didn't understand exactly what was going on at that point in my life. And from that point on is when things started going downhill for me mentally. And basically I became, I guess you would call, sort of depressed, sort of downhearted, and didn't feel like that anybody loved or cared for me. I was angry, I was hurt, I guess more confused as to why me, why did this happen? I knew that it was wrong. However, the abuse continued on for 7 years. I was afraid to speak to anyone, to talk to them about things, and I kept everything hidden from everybody, including my siblings. I blamed myself constantly. As I got older, that's when the drugs came into play. I needed a way out, and I knew I couldn't say anything because of the threats, and not only because of the threats, it was always the part of, that if you do say something, they're not going to believe you, and all this stuff over top of me, and those kind of things. And I couldn't figure out a way to get out of that situation that I was in. So that's the reason why that I ended up, once the drugs was introduced to me when I was almost 12, that's when everything started to change. I don't remember the very day that it happened. I started out with basically, they just handed me some marijuana, basically, and that's how it all began. And then things went downhill from that point. It was a part of being able to escape from that. The marijuana didn't take me away from that. However, when I started into the more heavier drugs, which was acid and all of that I started at that point, shortly after I was 12. About 6 months after I started, that's when all the drugs started to escalate and move forward, getting really worse and worse. I started taking more and more. It seemed to take more in order to be able to escape from what I was in. I had to have something heavier than that. I had to have something more than the marijuana side of it. So I ended up basically with the acid side of it. I was also taking pain medications, all of that I could find, that I could get together from people who would either give it or just go to the medicine cabinet and take a random amount of pills that I had no idea what they were. People started noticing that I was changing. My mother seemed to notice because I was more on certain things. I was more active, started getting in trouble, started doing things I shouldn't do. When they would tell me to not do something, I'd do it anyway. It was just, I had no thought of consequences for actions. I was reaching out to others, trying to, but it wasn't working. All they saw was a mean child, a mean kid, and that I was always going to be in trouble or, always doing something I shouldn't do. This continues on until I'm about 14. When I was almost 14 years old, I didn't want to live anymore. So I tied a rope around my neck, and I tied it around the banister on the second story, and I jumped off of it. The only thing that saved my life was the banister on the lower part actually caught me. If not, I wouldn't be here today. After that, I got mad at myself because I couldn't even do that right. And I felt like I never could do anything right. And the drugs continued, but they got worse with the combination of alcohol along with that, and then that's when I started getting in trouble with the law.
Alcohol use and related issues are significant concerns in Kentucky, with increased rates of alcohol use disorder and alcohol-induced deaths. The rate of alcohol-induced deaths increased from 6.6% to 14.6% per 100,000 people between 2013 and 2020. Real Recovery, Real Change continues with Ashley Carroll.
High school would see Virgil get into a lot of trouble and cost him his freedom.
After I got in trouble with the law and was charged with 4 Class D felonies and was sent away for 6 months away to a place in Louisville, was also sent to a psychiatric unit. Prior to that, I told a counselor that of the abuse. They confronted the person, the abuser, and it was basically came back that I was the one that was lying. So when the counselor told me that I was the one that lied, then I shut down completely. It's like nobody's ever going to believe me. Nobody's ever going to believe that I was, abused, and they're always going to believe the adult over top of what the child says. But all they could see was the person that had been in trouble with the law, the person who had been always constantly in trouble, constantly doing stuff. When I got out of there, I went to live with my grandmother. And things seemed to be going okay for about 3 weeks. And I got basically with some people I shouldn't have, got hooked back on drugs again. And so I was basically using drugs and drinking and all of that. And then I got in trouble with the law again. I was almost 16 years old. They basically said that they were tired of me, if you want to put it that way, and tried me as a youthful offender, charged me with a Class A felony, and I was facing 25 years to life in prison. And during the time while I was in jail, I didn't say a sinner's prayer. I basically looked up and said, okay, if you're real, then prove it to me. And I watched God prove himself time and time again. I had a lot of time, so I spent a lot of time in the Bible. I spent a lot of time, reading, praying, and talking to God to learn who God is. Not only that, I had to learn how to love myself. I had to almost change the way that people saw me, as far as the way that they always talked to me. The way that, you feel worthless, you feel like, nobody will ever love you, and I've heard comments of nobody's going to ever love you. And I had to take that part of it, and I had to take the Word of God and contradict what they said in order to change the way that I viewed myself. And that was a lot of a process through that 9.5 months or 9 months that I was there in that, and just learning over and over, okay, can I really trust you? Because I never could trust anybody else. I couldn't trust an adult because I don't know what you want from me. because I always believed that that's all that adults wanted is something from me. And so I had to learn, and it took time. And it took time to change my mentality.
The opioid epidemic has hit Kentucky particularly hard, with a high number of overdose deaths involving opioids. In 2020, Kentucky had the third highest age-adjusted drug overdose fatality rate in the United States. Real Recovery, Real Change continues with Ashley Carroll.
Virgil has decided to make a deal with the Lord, but his life will still face challenges.
I was ready to face whatever came from the judge because I know that there's consequences for actions. And I knew that there would be consequences for the actions that I did. However, I was not prepared for the sentence reduction because I had already set it in my head that, you know, if I spend the rest of my life in prison, I just spend the rest of my life in prison. And but I had to put my trust in God, that God would take care of it. The parole board came back with, we're going to let you go. Parole board said you have to continue counseling, you have to continue all this stuff when you get out. I continued, of course, on parole for 2 years, but during that time period I went to school. And I also worked a job, and I walked almost 10 miles every day to get to school and back home, and to my job, which is right near the school. And I also met my wife during that time period that I've now been married to for 33 years. It's been good. I knew that God was faithful, and I knew that I needed to be faithful as well. So put my reliance on Him changed the whole course of my life. And it took Him to do that. I started working with Randy with Frontier, and started out as a CSA with Venture Home. And when they moved me to residential, that's where I started to build the program that we currently have, which is Thrive, which is the education side of the program. So, and it's been great. I don't feel like I go to a job every day. I feel like I go more for ministry purposes. I watch and see the confidence that is built in each and every single resident that comes through. I watch how their lives can be changed through the education side. I'm amazed at what can be done. I see the potential in them that I had back then that nobody else saw. And I can see that in them because they can push past all of this. April 6th of this year, I have been 25 years clean. And I'm still going to church, still doing what I feel like God wants me to do. And I feel like that my ministry that God has placed me in is where I'm at right now with Frontier.
This program has been a production of Frontier Behavioral Health. For immediate help, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, dial 606-297-1501. Special thanks to the Redemption Chapel Church in Paintsville, Kentucky, for providing production assistance as a backdrop location for today's program, and welcomes all who come expecting to our morning service each Sunday at 11 a.m.